Welcome back to another episode of the Live Better podcast by Centric Federal Credit Union. I'm your host and Centric social media and marketing specialist, Emma Baines. I'm so excited you're here today. Every month we post a new episode where I'm joined by a guest to chat about all things living better and finances. Subscribe today so you never miss an episode. Today we are joined by Casey Messer, who is Centric's training manager, to chat about different ways to put your tax refund to good use. So for some of our listeners who may not know who you are, just tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do here at Centric.
Well, like you said, I'm the training manager, and just a little bit about my journey. I started as a teller here, right out of college, and I worked in the solutions department, and so I did collections, and then I worked as a community partner coordinator, so I made sure that our partners in the community, knew about our financial education and what we had to offer, and just made sure that they were up to date on all things Centric. And then now I am the training manager, and so I think just my love of teaching and coaching led me to the training position. So
yes, and you are very good at it, I must say. So 'tis the season for taxes. Some people love it, some people hate it. But I do know a lot of the members that we serve get a tax refund, and so I kind of just wanted to go into a little background on that, why some people get such significant tax refunds and some end up owing money. So what I found is if you're going to get a tax refund, it could be for a couple reasons. One, it could be because, really it's your money anyway, but you have overpaid throughout the year. So if you have your employer withholding too much from your paycheck, that would be one reason you would get a tax refund. And then another is even if you have very little income, if you have a lot of deductions or qualify for tax credits, then that would offset what you owe, and you would get a refund back. So let's say that I'm a member and I'm living paycheck to paycheck. You being a certified financial counselor, what advice do you have for what I could potentially do with that tax refund?
So the first thing and foremost, the most important thing is to establish an emergency fund. And I don't mean 3 months of your salary. I mean just the basic, and that's $1,000. So if you don't already have that set up or you're working towards it, go ahead and fund that and just at least establish it. Get it going. This is going to protect you from anything throughout the year that comes through that you're not really expecting, but it's going to keep you from putting all that on a credit card, and it's going to take you a while to pay that back. So it just helps you have a little bit of money to the side that's going to grow for you. So if you don't use it, that's the plus side, right? It's going to grow and add interest. So you'll just have more after that. So. Yeah.
And let me just add to that how important that is. So when I first got married, we had very little, definitely didn't have an emergency fund yet, and one of our appliances had to be replaced. And we had to put that on a credit card. And we had to take out a retail credit card, we didn't have one before. We had to get that and then put the appliance on that credit card. And it's kind of hindsight's 20/20. Had I known then what I know now, that credit card hurt our credit so bad because we just didn't have the knowledge, how to handle that properly and about making payments and interest. That was just so beyond us. We were so young. And an emergency fund is so important for that reason, not only to keep you out of debt, but just to keep you on top of things. And, that was one of the things I really regret. It was awful. But, maybe you're lucky and an emergency doesn't come up, and that's great. But there will come a time where you'll be glad that you have it, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and just going to paying down debt, what you just said, if you do have an emergency fund and you have that set aside and you feel good, about that, the next step I would say is just to pay down debt. Mm-hmm. So, putting more money into your pocket. If there's a smaller debt that you could pay down, I think that's the next step. So if you, have a couple of credit cards that you've racked up the balance on, it's good to pay that off. And then that just means that when that next month comes, you don't have to pay that bill. You get to keep that money.
Right.
And so having that big extra refund or just extra cash at all can go towards that. And then, we like to say the snowball method. So you take the smallest and then you go up towards the largest. That just helps with motivation, helps you be motivated to see it coming down and see your balances decreasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great idea. So we talked about emergency funds. We talked about paying off debt. And about paying off debt, I know, when you see a tax refund hit your account, it can be super exciting, and you're like, oh yes, I want to do this, and I want to treat myself because, the year has been hard, and I completely get that. And it requires serious self-discipline to be able to tell yourself no and be like, you know what, no, I cannot splurge crazy right now. Like, this has to go here, and this is what I need, this is what my family needs, this is what's best. It definitely takes some self-discipline.
Yeah, it does. And there's tons of things that we could do for our future self, right? If we would just do or we would be disciplined and just take the time, we could prepare ourselves for the future. So things like, your kids, are your kids going to go to college, or even just tuition costs in general, if you have that, put money aside for that. Do things that are going to help your future self, because doing what feels good right now, it's only going to feel good for a little while, right? And then, you're going to wake up 2 weeks from now and wonder where all your money went.
Exactly.
So I would definitely say, your future self would really thank you if you would put up for things like retirement. If you don't already have a retirement savings, or even if you do, put more money into it. That's always going to help you. But things that are coming up in the next couple of months too. So back to school, if your kids are going to be starting sports, there's things that you can prepare for that are coming that are a little bit nearer than retirement or college.
Right.
Even Christmas. If you don't save for Christmas every year, and that that's something that you struggle with, and you end up putting Christmas on a credit card, put some money aside for Christmas so that you don't have to worry about that, and then you're not paying Christmas the next year.
Exactly, yes.
It's another discipline thing, but it's just good to prepare and to think about what's to come, so that you don't find yourself struggling again, and you just felt so good about having all that extra cash.
Yeah. And too, one of the thoughts I had was, even if, you have an emergency savings and you don't have a ton of debt and you're okay financially, but you're going to get a little bit of a refund, you cannot go wrong in saving it. Even if you're not saving for anything specific right now, because you've got stuff covered, you will need it at some point, and you can never go wrong with just saving it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, saving it.
Yeah. So another thing I was thinking about was investing. So, if you can invest, maybe not all, but some, into some kind of an asset that does not depreciate. So, kind of, again, set your future self up, instead of blowing it on things that will depreciate, a shopping spree or something like that. So, we've talked about several good ways to utilize your tax refund if you're going to get one. So, what are some things you advise against?
So there are a couple of things, but the first thing that comes into mind is a lot of times you're offered a different way to receive your refund than just going into your account. And I would 100% say that you should have your refund go into your checking account. Don't use a prepaid card, or don't use some other form of receiving that method. Anything else, really. Even a check, you're going to have to wait on that. And so I would just say direct deposit into your account. You can see it on your mobile app. You can have access to it immediately, and there's no wait times on that.
Right.
With those prepaid cards, sometimes they charge you a fee to check the balance, to use it. If you don't use it the way they want, and you might not have access to all of your money as quickly as you want. There may be limits in place. So I would just say no to those prepaid cards, and yes to direct deposit. I think that's my biggest thing. It's so important.
Yeah.
Just takes time to get your money. So.
Yeah. And why? What's the point?
Yeah.
So as far as ways you'd advise against spending it, what do you think about that?
So definitely not the huge shopping sprees like we just talked about. What feels good right now is not going to feel as good in 2 weeks or even the next day sometimes. Right. You wake up and you're like, why did I just do that? I went into Target for one thing and it just happens. But just, unnecessary spending, I guess is kind of how I would say that. It's okay to spend a little bit on yourself, but unnecessary spending. Take care of your needs first, and then your wants will come. You can do that after. But like you said, saving, that's the most important thing, and then your wants can come after that. And just, unnecessary upgrades. Do you really need a new TV at this time, or is your TV just fine and it feels good? And again, that's a want. That's not a need. Right.
Or do you really need the brand new iPhone?
Yeah.
You have a decent, just little things like that. But I do think, a little treat for yourself understandable, as long as there's some discipline with that and you're not blowing the whole entire thing. For sure. So what about keeping a lot of cash at your house? So, if this hits your account and then you run to the bank and withdraw all of it, what do you think about that?
So I think sometimes, and I kind of laugh at this question because I think that we're like this sometimes, my husband more so than I am. He feels like if he can hold on to it physically, that he's going to hold on to it longer. And so he wants to go get it and bring it home and like store it in the safe or whatever. But what you're missing out on is interest. Like the bank will pay you to keep it here. And so that's what's really cool, is that you can actually make your money grow for you.
Exactly.
Versus taking it home. And, there's so many risks with that. We don't have to get into that. But
yes, for sure.
There's tons of ways that you could lose your money at home. So bring it here, bring it to the bank, and just let it grow for you. There's CD options. Checking accounts are paying you here at Centric. So why not? And we have a savings account that pays too. So savings, checking, and then the certificate too. If you don't need that particular money right now, set it up in a certificate and let it grow for you. Those rates are great right now.
Exactly. I completely think it is the best idea to keep it in a place like Centric where it can grow, where it's insured, where it is safe, than just storing cash away at your house. I think that can absolutely be a terrible idea. So any other ways that you think you should not spend your tax refund money?
Well, just kind of like what we were talking about with unnecessary spending, I would also, this just comes to mind, it's unnecessary for you to lend your money to others. So I know that when we are super close with maybe our family or our friends and we've seen them struggling, or we see them come into some struggles, or even not even a struggle, but just trying to like get going in life, and we want to be the one to save the day. Make sure that you're prepared for that. And when I say that, I really highly recommend against that, because you never know what's happening. They're needing you for a reason. So are they needing you because they couldn't manage their finances prior? You have to take that into consideration. Even though you love them and you know them, are they really going to pay you back?
Right.
And sometimes they feel like because your family, maybe they don't have to pay you back. And then that's putting you in a situation. So really think about that. I've seen that a lot in our solutions department. I saw that so many times. Parents or even like brothers and sisters, they would sign on a loan, and or even just friends. That's something that you really have to make sure you're the person that you're getting into business with them essentially. And so just be careful of that, lending it to your uncle because he wants something and he needs something right now, and you feel like that's a good idea. I mean, you're giving all your money to them, so just be really careful of that.
And you have to always, I think the safest thing is to assume if you're going to lend it to somebody, there's a good chance that you're not going to get it back, and that's something you have to be prepared for once you give it away. I mean that's just the way it ends up going a lot of times, like you said, because you've seen that. As far as going back to good things to do with your tax refund, there's always something to budget for. So I don't care how many expenses you have or don't have, there's always regular places that your money needs to go. And sometimes those fluctuate. So the first thing that just popped in my mind was groceries. Like some weeks we can get away with not spending that much on groceries, and then other weeks we need extra things and our grocery bill is a lot higher than what we're used to. I mean, there's always somewhere that you can stick that money that will benefit you and your family in the weeks and months to come. As opposed to, like we said, just blowing it. Like, it's easy to say, well, I'm not going to spend a lot, I'm just going to spend a little bit here. And then once that snowball gets going, you look up a month later and your tax refund is gone and you didn't do anything productive with it. But yeah, and then, can you tell our listeners a little bit about the different accounts that we have here at Centric that you could, put parts of your refund into? So,
and I know these all too well just because personally I use them. And so I'll just start with the Centric products, and then I'll share a little bit about me personally, how I organize what you're talking about for extra groceries and things like that. So Centric does have multiple savings accounts for one, so you can have like just a couple of different basic savings and you can name them different things. But then also of course we have the rewards checking account, and so you want to take that into consideration and understand what money can I place here and how can it grow for me. And then we also have a savings account that earns a high interest rate. So those two are like dynamite together. You can really make your money work for you. Then on top of that, there are certain savings accounts that are for certain things. So Christmas Saver and Vacation Saver. So I use a lot of what I just mentioned, but one of my favorite things is having those multiple savings accounts and saving for all that separately. Even if I only have like $10 in there and I'm putting $5 at a time, I can see that for this vacation or for this circumstance, that money is growing, and that's encouraging to me. And I know we've talked about this before, and I've shared this so many times. Anytime I get a chance to talk to somebody, having a big savings account is great, but if you don't have even the things inside of it labeled, it can seem like you have money to go on a vacation, when really you break that down and you just have a little bit of extra grocery money, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And if you just take all of that and go on a big vacation, well, you've just kind of not set yourself up for success, right? Set yourself up for failure, essentially. So I like to see those things separated, and Centric does a great job of allowing us to have many different accounts, and we can label them, we can customize them, and then we can see that in our app and we can manage it.
That's good. Yeah. So you can always go into the app, see what's in which account, and monitor that, and spend accordingly. Yeah. Because I know what you're saying, like if you just have a lump in your savings account, like if you did just take your whole tax refund and put it in your savings account, that can be okay, not a bad thing. But like you said, if the only place you're kind of keeping track of what money needs to go where is in your head, it can get kind of fuzzy and it can get complicated, and it can be spent on things where it wasn't supposed to be spent. Yeah. So I think the separation thing is wonderful. I really like that. Is there anything else you wanted to add about what to do or what not to do with tax refunds before we kind of wrap up?
No, I really think we've covered a lot of the big things. I mean, I know I've said this, but just to kind of reiterate, really think about what's to come, whether it's short term or long term. I think that's the most important thing, and just look and see, are there ways that, I can, help myself not feel so stressed. And for a lot of people, and this is something that we share with our staff too here at Centric, this time of year may be the only time that you receive a big bonus or a lump sum of money at all. And it's really like we go back to the discipline thing. It's really hard to be disciplined and to understand that we really should look at what's to come and not just right now. So that's, if you heard nothing else, hear that. Just identify what's coming up and what are your needs that you can meet with this tax refund.
Exactly, because the reality is everyday life is not always easy, and anything that you can do to make everyday life a little easier, you will thank yourself for later.
That's right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Casey, for being here today. I hope all of our listeners were able to learn smart moves to make with your tax refund this year. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and tune back in next month for another episode of the Live Better podcast by Centric Federal Credit Union. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to ensure you never miss out on helpful tips. Like us on Facebook at Centric Federal Credit Union, and find us at MyCentric on YouTube, Instagram, and Pinterest. You can find information about today's topic and more at mycentric.org. Centric is federally insured by the NCUA.